Hey, Tatooine Sons family, this is David. We're trying something new for the next few weeks. We realize that we discuss a lot of topics on each episode, and sometimes there are big time spoilers. And that means if you haven't watched a particular movie or episode yet, you may be forced to skip the episode until you have. And we don't want you to miss out on the other conversations on our show because you're worried about being spoiled in one segment. So we're going to release each of our main topics in smaller individual episodes that last between 10 to 15 minutes each, so you don't miss those other topics that you want to hear. Today's episode is BB Nate's tribute to Kevin Conroy. If you are a regular listener, you already know what a massive Batman fan Nathan is. So, of course, he really wanted to share his thoughts on Conroy's legacy and his portrayal of the Dark Knight in animation and video games. I hope you enjoy it.
So, Dad, you actually watched Batman vs. Robin a couple days ago.
The animated.
Yes.
Not the movie.
No, there's no movie. There's Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin. That's
but Batman vs. Robin, the animated movie, you watched that
we did.
a few days ago.
Yeah.
Sammy, you've seen that before,
that's
too.
The one with the court, right?
Yeah. Did you know that actually Kevin Conroy voiced Thomas Wayne in that? In the
That's
flashback
amazing.
Series? Yeah,
I
he
didn't
voiced
realize
Thomas Wayne
that.
in those movies, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I was watching it for this is probably the fifth or sixth time I've seen this movie, and I just noticed it for the first time this time. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It was
amazing.
fun. But yeah, Kevin Conroy was and always will be the Batman. That's easy to say. Back in 1992, audiences didn't know what this new Batman cartoon was going to mean, but they soon found out. Kevin brought a side of Batman to audiences that we'd never seen before, a human side. Batman was someone we could look to and finally relate to. And we've seen it in the comics a lot, but never in movies or TV, especially not Adam West's TV series until then.
Yeah, very different for sure.
So, Dad, did you actually watch any of the Batman animated series when it came out in the 90s?
I didn't realize it was all the way back in 92. Is that what you said? But I definitely remember watching that series a lot over the years. I remember when I think of the Batman animated series, my mind goes to my first apartment here in Daphne, Alabama.
Really?
When we first moved down here. They would show episodes of it late at night, and I would watch it, by myself late at night watching it. So I always, what I remember about it, when you talk about how it was so different than what we'd experienced. I mean, we'd had Batman '89, we'd had Batman Returns, which is a fever dream of a movie.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. And, of course, the Batman TV series, Adam West version of it, which was, hey, that was cool Batman when I was a kid.
Right.
I thought that was awesome to have Batman. But to get this, it was very different. It was dark. It was literally dark. I mean, it's always, the scenes are usually dark, but the animation was different. The scoring was different, and it felt like, we talk about this a lot, but it did kind of feel like we were watching a graphic novel, not a comic book,
right?
A graphic novel in animated form, and that was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that.
Sam, did you ever really watch this show when you were younger? I don't really remember.
Yeah, I watched a bit here and there. I think I mainly watched Batman Beyond.
Okay, yeah.
Which I know he's in it as Bruce.
He was old Bruce.
But one thing I do remember, I don't know if this is still, if it's tied into this series at all, but there was a movie. It was like Batman and Superman or something like that. Joker
Batman,
and Lex
Superman,
Luthor swapped
that
places. I remember watching that movie a lot and really enjoying that movie.
So what was that movie part of the animated series?
It was
canon or chronology,
yes.
or whatever.
That was a part of it, and then you had the Justice League show, and then the Justice League Unlimited show, and all of those are part of the same canon.
Now, clarify this. I know we've talked about this before, but I always seem to get muddled with it. Was the Mask of the Phantasm, was that the beginning of this, or was that later on that they
was
brought
about
it
a
in?
year after
this
show came in.
Okay,
started about a year and a month on the day about.
Okay.
So it was a big deal. But speaking of that, the show not only impacted animation with it being the first cartoon show ever drawn on black paper to kind of get that gritty dark
feel that I mentioned.
But it soon made its way to cinema with the amazing Mask of the Phantasm. And we actually got a chance to see this in a theater a few weeks ago.
Absolutely, on Batman Day, right?
Yes. What did y'all think of that movie and its portrayal of Batman?
Yeah, it holds up with modern interpretations of Batman, modern films for Batman. it doesn't feel. A lot of people think that just because it's animation means it's for kids, and while generally animated things are geared towards kids, this movie didn't feel like a kid's, product whatsoever. It had a deep story. It had interesting characters. It had emotions with Bruce and I forget her name. Girl, Andrea, not being able to be together and all of that, and like him begging his parents to let him go back on his promise.
I mean, expect to be happy.
That's some heavy, that's some heavy stuff. And again, that's all due to Kevin's
amazing
portrayal of Bruce. Not only Bruce, but Batman too. I mean, he defined both versions of the characters and how it's to be portrayed.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And then of course you can't help talking about the Batman animated series and specifically The Mask of the Phantasm without talking about Mark Hamill's Joker.
Well, it's the other side of the coin.
It really is. And that's one of the beautiful things about the animated series with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill is they capture those characters so well, and the dynamic of the arch rival that Joker is in Batman in the story. They captured that in the interaction is fantastic. It's I don't know if you guys saw Mark's comments on the passing of Kevin Conroy, but obviously this is a big deal to him too, and so we but again I can't help but think about. When I think about Batman, the animated series, I automatically think about the Joker in that and how it sort of changed the way that the Joker was portrayed in my mind in a lot of ways. Because my experience with the Joker had been Cesar Romero and Jack Nicholson, and then it's some comics. But I wasn't into the Batman comics. This one was really good. And and you don't get the Bruce Wayne and the Batman that we get in the animated series in The Mask of the Phantasm without the amazing portrayal of the Joker that you get by Mark Hamill.
Definitely. And Kevin voiced many more versions of Batman in movies and TV. He even sang a blues song in an episode of Justice League Unlimited.
I need to watch that.
That was a great episode. But his impact on Batman was felt all over the world. It became even more prominent when Arkham Asylum was released. Superhero games were never the same after that. Arkham City is actually considered one of the greatest video games of all time and the highest rated superhero game by a long
Above
shot.
Night?
Oh my gosh. It's I think if you check IMDb, it's about a 9.2 star rating.
Wow.
It's great. And so his amazing voice as Batman made those games what they are. And Sam, you played City. What did you think of it and Kevin's work in it?
I mean, it just shows his talent, and it kind of is just another praise for his portrayal of Bruce and Batman in the animated series. I mean, again, that is an animated show. It wasn't as dark as City by any means, but he didn't have to change it much to transition to this story just because that's Bruce Wayne and Batman. He nailed that character in such a way that it was versatile enough to be in any medium. It didn't feel out of place. His portrayal of Batman just was exactly what you needed, and I'm sure it's a different experience for him in recording a game. That's a very different world to be in.
Why do you feel like that's different though? Because I mean, it's a voiceover work. It's in a studio. It's a lot more work.
It is,
and you got to have. You'll record lines that some people probably won't ever hear because they didn't do this one vague mission that you have to do a bunch of steps to get to, Right. So a lot of his work in that, may never see the light of day, but he still puts his all into it, and you can tell that. And didn't Mark Hamill do Joker in this game too?
Well.
Again, it just kind of proves your point there.
Most of the people that did the animated series did this.
Was Harley Quinn?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
Really?
I'm pretty sure Harley Quinn was
but it just kind of shows, goes back to show what you were saying, Dad. It's kind of the antithesis to Batman is Hamill's Joker, and their dynamic in this game,
in this whole series.
Too.
So tell me
Really
about that
works.
game, because I'm not familiar with it, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are maybe not as familiar with the Arkham games and that type of thing. So what is it about those games, and specifically, I know we're talking about Kevin Conroy, about his portrayal of Batman in it, that is so compelling and so admired?
The entire series minus Origins, which was by a different studio and had different voice actors because it was a prequel and everything, they wanted a different storyline. But the Asylum City and Night are all, they redefined the superhero game genre because they spent time telling a full story, and they made sure that it was well done. They made sure that you felt like you were controlling Batman and you were Batman for a little while. And what made it so impactful that Kevin did all of this and his work in it was he did have a few scenes as Bruce and a few scenes as Batman, especially in City. In City, you open up as Bruce, and you're having to go through a whole scene with that, and then you transition to Batman. And the one thing about it is all of these games, Asylum, City, and Night, take place in one night. All of them are, you're just going around trying to complete this mission over one night, and it's not over multiple days. And especially with Night, which is the longest out of all of them, and the ending of tonight is great to show how in everything that Kevin does, you can kind of tell the difference between Batman and Bruce. You can tell that it's similar enough, but it's different so that it just isn't obvious that he's Bruce. But towards the end of Night, he starts to let that facade go down after a few things happen. I'm trying not to spoil a game that's been out for like over 8 years almost, but
I think it's safe to spoil it.
It is Scarecrow reveals Batman's identity for the entire world. Okay. And so, but closer to the end of that, after Scarecrow kind of already knows, you can tell that he's starting to let go on that wall and just becoming Batman really than anything. Because when he takes the mask off, he still just sounds like Batman instead of Bruce. And so, and then the final, after you 100% the game and complete the Nightfall protocol, when he's putting the mask away and talking to Jim and Alfred, you can just tell that he's having a final moment. And it's just great because it wouldn't be the same without Kevin doing that voice. And the entire game, all of those games are just great.
It probably helps that he had portrayed this character for so long before then, because he knows the character in and out and how that character would think, act, and behave in that moment.
And the other thing, especially, I have to keep going to Night because it just has so many great moments. After City, Joker dies. Joker dies in Arkham City.
Right.
But in Night, his past is kind of haunting Batman's mind. Okay. And so he's just there, and he shows up every now and then, kind of just like in an elevator.
Joker's literally in his head.
Yes, 100%. And so you have these conversations. There are whole conversations where you're like riding an elevator, going to the next level, and you just have conversations between him and a Joker in his head. Or there are moments when like Scarecrow releases fear toxin on the entire city, and Batman's just trying to get into the Batmobile through all this fear toxin, and Joker's just there trying to break down on him. And then you have this final scene with Joker where you kind of go into Batman's head, and you play as Joker because he kind of took over Batman's mind at that point. And so you're playing as Joker going through the mind of Batman, and he's just like a shadow. You see shadows of him, and then the ending, he just kind of takes over and he's like, and he rids Joker of his mind. It's a great scene, and it just shows the power of his portrayal.
Well, I think it's funny because when we think about Batman and you talk about the character and the actors that have portrayed him going all the way back to Adam West, right? The conversation usually comes down to, oh, this actor that portrayed him, it was a great Batman. And then somebody else will say, well, but then this other actor was a great Bruce Wayne. And this is the kind of conversation you hear a lot about different people, right? Yes. But when you talk about Kevin Conroy, you never once hear him being described as, man, he played Batman really, really well, or he played Bruce. It's you see him as one complete actor portraying both sides of this character equally well, and that's one of the most
because he did a great job playing both, because that's who he was. And actually, Kevin even kickstarted the DC animated movie universe with Flashpoint Paradox. He voiced Batman in that, which is an amazing animated movie and an amazing cinematic universe
that Sam still hasn't seen.
Yes.
Still need to finish it.
Still need to watch it. Yeah. It's a great movie.
It is a good movie.
Kevin actually made a huge impact on Batman, but he's also made a huge impact on the fans. As people read Batman comics, we hear Kevin's voice in our head, and he is and always will be Batman. I'll never forget sitting on the floor in our living room as a kid and watching Batman the Animated Series just on repeat, episode after episode. He is my Batman, and he helped shape my fandom into what it is today.
Wow.
The world will miss Kevin forever, but the legacy of his work and everything he did will never be forgotten.
Nate really was getting choked up talking about Kevin Conroy's passing. It's really amazing to me to think how an individual can come to mean so much to us, even if we've never met them. Batman and DC animation will never be the same after Kevin's passing. Thank you for checking out this short segment from our full Tatooine Sons episode this week. The rest of the episode is a lot of fun as we talk about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and specifically Shuri's faith journey, and also Akino Loy's powerful speech from episode 10 of Andor, One Way Out. We'd love for you to check that out. Be sure to follow us on all of the different socials at Tatooine Sons. That's SONS. Again, Sons with an O. And of course,
may the force be with you always.